Hello Mudlarking Friends. Now, if this part of the Thames looks unfamiliar to you, it's because we're not actually on the River Thames. I've gone up north once again to check out the remains of an 18th century salt refinery and check in with that large inscribed sandstone block that I found a couple of years ago. Firstly, let's take a look around some of the rubble dumped here back in the 1950s, and that was done to help stop erosion. We've got World War II anti-tank defences. Now these were known as Dragon's Teeth, and there's also lots of Blitz rubble clearance from a nearby city. This area here used to be covered in sand and mudflats until fairly recently, and that hid all this rubble. When it cleared, it revealed everything here, and people have been coming to check it out since. So here we are at the foundations of a wharf of what was once a salt refinery. Its earliest mention was in 1692, where it's described as a salt works which was in production. It hadn't been built yet, it was in production. Now later, in the 19th century, this same space was used as a stoneworks and then a boat breaking yard. So it's been through a few different uses, but its main use was as a salt refinery. Areas of the northwest of England are really rich in rock salt, and during the 18th century to circa 1840, barges and other boats delivered unrefined salt across the estuary to this wharf here, ready to be processed at the refinery which once stood in this spot. Local historian Mike Royden describes these walls and structures as forming part of the original refinery, which was erected by early industrialists in the 17th century. So that's going back to that document that a refinery was here ready for production. So all the surrounding area here within this once small fishing hamlet was populated with salt workers and fishermen. Now, interestingly, not only was this area rich in and busy with rock salt, but the coal industry was thriving here too. Mike Royden again, writing of the salt refinery. The earliest documentary evidence regarding the salt works was in a letter written in 1697 by Thomas Johnson to Richard Norris of Speke Hall, which says, "Do not forget to move the commissioners of the customs to settle an officer on the establishment," that being the salt works. And the letter goes on to state, "It's a great charge and trouble to us as the matter now is." So they wanted to get it sorted out. Now we know that two cottages, still standing just off the south side of a nearby lane, were erected for the sole use of the customs and excise. In December 1746, the salt works were advertised for sale, and the advert read, "To be sold by auction to the highest bidder at the Merchant's Coffee House in Liverpool on Monday the 29th of this instant December at 6 o'clock that evening." A salt works consists of 4 pans, situated in the county of Lancaster on the River Mersey, which hath very good navigation up to said works, which can be easily supplied with rock salt and with salt water to work it from the River Mersey. The building is mostly new and all in good repair, and convenient for carrying on the trade of making and refining salt. Although not in quite the same state today, we certainly are lucky to be able to see the foundations here, the wharf area, and also the areas such as the underground brick chambers which are now visible due to wave erosion. Now a quick reminder as to why I'm here. This is the same place I found what we called at the time a grave marker. I quite literally stumbled across a large sandstone block about 2.5 years ago in this place. When I first spotted it, I of course wondered if it might be a crude grave marker for people lost at sea, or perhaps a memorial to salt refinery workers who'd met an untimely end. When I first spotted this enormous chunk of sandstone, I of course thought of an ancient grave marker or memorial stone. However, being a realist, I didn't want to jump to that conclusion because, well, what are the chances? I started researching the minute I got home, and also got in touch with a number of intertidal archaeologists and historians. Despite my cynicism, following discussions and research, we all think, even with its unlikely shape and size, that this sandstone slab might very well be a 17th century memorial or grave marker. But for who? After the discovery of rock salt in Cheshire in 1670, new salt refineries popped up around the Mersey, making the most of this burgeoning rock salt industry. One of those refineries was built exactly where we were mudlarking at Dungeon. It was called the Dungeon Salt Works. Flatboats and barges brought rock salt across the river from Cheshire to Dungeon, where it was refined before being shipped onwards. Carrying on with my research, I discovered that one of the major pioneers of the 17th century salt industry was a gentleman named Richard Norris of the old Lancashire House of Norris. He was the grandson of Sir William Norris, knighted after fighting for the Lancastrians at the Battle of Stoke. Sir William Norris oversaw the construction of nearby Speke Hall, where future Norrises would come to live. Richard Norris of Speke Hall, Sheriff of Lancashire, and a powerful Member of Parliament, was instrumental in ensuring the salt works were a success. Now, remember the initials on the sandstone? TN, LN, RN. Could the three initials on the sandstone relate to Richard Norris, his ancestor Thomas Norris, and Letitia Norris, wife of Thomas, but also a Norris herself pre-marriage, a distant relation from the West Derby branch of the Norrises? Richard, Thomas and Letitia are all mentioned in various early 20th century reference books regarding Speke Hall and the salt works, it having been of some importance to them. Another clue I found came from the inventory of Speke Hall. The Norrises carved a number of stones with their initials and symbols or dates when building parts of Speke Hall. So, am I reaching here with my theory? Or could this sandstone slab be in memoriam of three Norrises who were pivotal in the progress of the Dungeon Salt Works? I had the Citizen scheme from Museum of London Archaeology. They're the intertidal archaeologist scheme, and they came down and recorded the stone and had a look at it and put it on their intertidal map. So it's been looked at by archaeologists, including the legendary Gustav Milne, and it has been ruled out as a grave marker. However, that doesn't mean it wasn't one. The sandstone block measures 54 centimetres in length, with a width of 30 centimetres and a depth of 25 centimetres, so it's really hefty. Carved into the upper surface of the stone is a skull and crossed bones, otherwise known as a death's head motif. Underneath this motif, we've got three lines of initials, TN, LN and RN, engraved one above each other. Now, Andy Sherman from the Citizen Scheme wrote a blog about the stone, and in it he says this: "The remains of a sandstone quay built for the salt works can still be seen on the foreshore. The 1895 Ordnance Survey mapping shows the industrial building now labelled as a stoneworks with two small open reservoirs located just to the east of the building. By the end of the 19th century, the sandstone quay was being used as a shipbreaking yard, and that eventually went out of business in 1912. Now, could the stone be related to any of these activities? Andy says it could be, but it seems a slim chance. He goes on to say that the markings on the stone look too irregular and crude to be a formal grave marker. But good old Gustav, he noted that my theory of an informal marker for sailors lost at sea might be a plausible explanation. Whatever it is, I love this find, and it remains one of my most important discoveries to date. Okay, well, stay tuned for part 2 to see what else I found on this northern estuary trip. Bye for now, guys.